So right now I'm sitting with my friend Jay Swanson. He's like the American in Paris. This guy you've done how many vlogs at this point?
Well, if you include monthly vlogs as well as daily or weekly, I don't know, somewhere close to 1,400 at this point.
1,400. This guy has been everywhere in Paris. You've been living here for a few years.
Yep.
But more importantly, like we've become good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like we hang out a lot.
We've known each other for over a year now.
Yeah, and have a lot of really interesting conversations. And so I thought I would record one about being, like, I think the starting point can be being American in Paris, but we can go in any of a million different directions.
There's a lot of content just within that conversation.
What do you think is the DNA of, like, what is the kind of person that comes and moves here from the US?
There's so many different types. I don't know. Like, for me, I'm here just because I want to be here.
Yeah.
And I can't explain that. Like, as a kid, I just wanted to learn French.
Yeah.
I regret it now, but I was like really rebellious about it in school. I was like, I'm not learning Spanish. No gracias. You know, I was like, get out of here. Like, I'm gonna learn French.
Why do you regret that?
Because I should have learned Spanish and then learned French. Because we could have learned Spanish much younger than French, so I could have done both. I just always wanted to live here, and it was kind of an ignorant desire too. Because like when I first lived here, it was in Nice. And I liked it okay. It was a good experience. My French, this is where I became fluent. But like, I was like, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about all this. And then I came to Paris and I was like, this is what I wanted.
Why? What is it? Just the
I don't know.
city?
It's the feel of the city. It's like, it's everything about the city. The vibe,
I agree.
The architecture, the people, the food. There's just so much stuff that you know, like really called to me. And so then I was like, I have to go back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately at that time, like that was not an easy thing to do. Like getting back to Paris or France at all at that point was like a massive. It was you know, setting sail and hoping to hit an island that I didn't know how to, you know, navigate to. Yeah, that's me. And I think there are a lot of people like that who just want to be here for whatever reason and try to make that happen. And then I think there are people that stumble into it for work, and there are people that, you know, have to come here for something they didn't want to, whatever that reason is. There are people that come here for love, which is risky. I don't know just as a forewarning, I don't know very many success stories on that front.
Yeah.
Most people that uproot their lives to come here for someone.
It's just crazy. I mean, I guess the question is rooted. The reason I ask this question is because it is such a bureaucratic obstacle course that you have to really be like, there's a level of conviction required.
There has to be a reason that you want to be here. Yeah. There has to be something for sure. There are a lot of people but I think that's honestly part of the reason that they make it so hard. Because the
demand is high.
I think they're skeptical. I think they're like, you don't really want to be here. You think you want to be here. You don't really want to be here.
Just do the 3-month tourist visa.
We'll show you what it's like to be here.
Yeah.
Here, take a taste. Yeah. So I think that there's an element of that in there. I think anybody that wants to come here should give it a try. Maybe start with a short visa, but again, if you love it, you can make it happen. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy. Unless you've got, there are obviously people with connections or with dual nationalities or all kinds of things that it is easy for. And then you look at those people and you're like, why?
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's why I'm speaking specifically on Americans in Paris, because for the most part, it's this battle. I mean, you've had to do years of visa, you know, I don't know how openly you talk about this. Actually, you do pretty openly talk about this.
Yeah, I do. I made videos about it.
Yeah.
Not for
visa
a long time,
jiu-jitsu, exactly. And so, you know.
No visa Krav Maga for me.
So how long have you lived here for?
I've lived here I've lived here for just over 4 years.
Do you feel like Paris, we're going to speak specifically about Paris right now and then France. Okay. Do you think Paris is overrated or underrated?
Well, I think they're so different. You have to, I don't know. It depends on who you ask, right? Because some people, I think for me, a lot of the reason that I started making a lot of the videos that I was making about how to use the metro, how to visit the Louvre, like really basic stuff, was because I knew that there were so many people that came here that had a bad experience that, like, if they'd only gotten off on the right foot, it would have been totally different. And so I feel like a lot of people that hate Paris have a really unfair view or unfair take on it because for one reason or another, they just didn't align. And maybe if they just understood something culturally, it can be really stressful using public transportation if you come from a place that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those things where it's like, so I feel like it gets a lot a lot of grief that it doesn't deserve. But I do think that there are people that kind of fetishize it, and it turns into Disneyland. And Americans aren't as bad about this, although I think a lot of people get here and are surprised to find that it's a dirty city with rats and pigeons and whatever else. But there's the other side of it where you have the Japanese who their embassy has a hotline for Paris syndrome, where people get here expecting this glistening Disneyfied city, and the difference is so stark for them. They actually have a psychotic break and need to be medevaced back to Japan. So thankfully there aren't a lot of Americans that I think have that extreme of an experience, but I think there's the two sides, right? And I feel like people just had reasonable expectations going in.
It is a case study on expectations.
Yeah, it is. Then you're fine. And if you know that you need to say bonjour when you walk into any establishment.
Literally really simple things
It'll change your whole time here. And if you just try to speak a little French, you don't have to speak French to come here, but it makes such a big difference if you say bonjour and then you just stumble through something. Yeah. They'll switch to English, but they will do it so much quicker and so much more in a friendlier manner, just because you made the effort. And it shows respect. Yeah. So I don't know, it's just things like that. That's why I want to communicate that. And I think, so if Paris is overrated or not, I think it's underrated, because I think there are a lot of Americans in particular, who intentionally skip Paris because Paris has been done before.
So underrated.
I think it's underrated.
That is a strong claim.
I think it depends, again, on what camp you're talking to. I think there are some people that overrate it. But I think that, I just know so many people...
Because, it's one of the most hyped cities in the world, and you're saying it's underrated.
Yeah, but it depends on, again, what camp you're talking to. Because I think there are a lot of Americans who do not want to go to Paris, and who, refuse, who skip it. They want to go to Amsterdam and London. Part of it's because they know that they can speak the language. Part of it's that they know they're going to be, better received. And I think a lot of people have this conception of Paris, which isn't totally inaccurate sometimes, but of, a level of douchery,
Yeah.
That, they look at it and they think, oh, it's a bunch of, bougie, snooty people. It's not where I want to be. And that can be true of certain areas.
As if London didn't have that.
Right, everywhere has that. But, there are some amazing parts of Paris that people are friendly and, welcoming and lovely. And so, again, it's just expectations, but it's also just... I think there's a lot of misconceptions because of, again, that fetishizing. People put Paris into this hole. They shove it in there, and they're like, no, it's the golden epoch or whatever. Hemingway was there, and that's the Paris I always want to imagine. And Paris has moved on since then, but because people want to keep it this thing, I think that process on both sides has a negative impact.
So I had a Mexican roommate, when I was living in Mexico, who spent time in Paris and had a horrible experience, really. Yeah. And he said that it just felt like Paris is this gigantic museum, and it's unable. It's just carrying too much historical weight. Yeah. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like no? There's a modern side to this city as well?
I think there's both. Yeah. I think that. Well, but again, I think that's that thing where there's within France, within Paris, and then externally, especially for the tourism side of things, history. There are, again, those people that want to keep Paris what it is and not let it change and grow. Yeah. And the French culture itself is one that's just it abhors change. So when you see protests and so forth, there's always gridlock because people want change, but they don't want to change.
With Jay's help, I was actually just able to open a bank account here
Big news.
Today, this morning, for the first time in France. I've been here for a year and a half almost at this point. And to those of you that are cool, what's the big deal? That is a big deal. I've tried, prior to today, with 4 other banks. I was refused with no explanation. They just don't want to work with you. I tried sending essentially an application to the Banque de France, which is the Federal Reserve almost of France, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent is, but yeah.
Trying to prove to them, look, because legally I have a right to have a bank account here. And the only way that it actually worked out was, I honestly think, thanks to the fact that we went to Jay's bank and that he was sitting there next to me as proof that I'm trustworthy.
Yeah, and I think that it helps that when they're pushing you out, they shouldn't. They may not even have legal grounds to do it, but they just don't want to deal with the paperwork. Right. And they're probably not going to do that in front of me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're not going to be oh no, we can't, because then I'll be why? And then it's a difference. It's a big difference.
But I think the point I'm trying to make here is it's interesting. When you live in a foreign city, abroad,
Yep.
you need help. You need allies.
Yep.
You know, I made the joke earlier today that it felt like Jay was at the cliff edge, like pulling me on. And without that sort of support, it's so difficult finding your way.
It's really it's hard. Doing it entirely on your own is really hard to do. Actually, even when I first moved here, it was a friend of a friend that helped me get a bank account.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask you. So
yeah, I was thinking about that when I first got here. The second time I did it on my own, but I think it was because I got rejected the first time I tried from the bank we just went to today.
Yeah.
So the history was that I've lived in France 3 times. Each time you have to get a bank because you need a bank account. Even if you don't end up using it, you have to legally have it for tax purposes and so forth.
And also, I mean, just many reasons. Like I couldn't use Le Bon Coin, which is like the French eBay
or Craigslist.
I couldn't get a Velib subscription. Velib is like the bike sharing. Yeah, they only accept French cards.
Yep.
It's just a lot. I mean, it's just like it's part of getting integrated into a country.
It is really, and it is one of those things that like even if it's changed. When I first moved here, the help I got was mostly because my French was still really shaky. Now, what makes it harder with these French banks is that they just have a mountain of extra paperwork they have to do for Americans.
No, I get it. Look, I get it.
But it doesn't make it okay for them to say no to you.
The thing is, the rules are random. Like this is something I wanted to talk to you.
The application of them are random.
I wanted to talk to you about
the rules are clear.
The process of moving here, getting integrated here, and navigating the randomness of French bureaucracy. Because it's like I'm sitting in these banks. Okay, I really think this is like a good like metaphor almost, or like a concrete example, if you will, which is the opposite of a metaphor, a concrete example to base my arguments off here. Because I'm sitting in these different banks. We're making progress. It looks like I'm going to get the bank account. And then some invisible barrier comes up. And then I suddenly cannot have the bank account. And it's almost like these invisible rules, these invisible laws of physics that only exist in this country. You know, in this certain way, because I know that there's bureaucracy in other countries as well. But I was coming up against it and unable to traverse those obstacles. So I'm curious how that experience has been for you, how you've navigated that.
It's by Braille, right? Like you're just trying to feel your way through, and there's a lot. I feel like there's just a lot of trial and error, and it depends where you're at too. We were talking about Nice earlier. I lived in Nice when I first got here, and like they take it to the next level. I feel like where here
worse than here.
Yeah, because here like everybody. You know, maybe my experience is a little bit outdated, so I'll go back and try to open a bank account there and we'll see what happens. But here it's like they throw up barriers just to see if you have the willpower to cross them.
Well, yeah.
So that's part of it. Whereas in Nice, they throw up similar barriers, but they actually lie to you sometimes because there's an element of. We just picked the one day where that guy's making a delivery in a really bad spot.
Everybody, right? Yeah,
they're all pissed. Anyways, lunch rush.
Hey, I wanted to give
calm area.
A natural Parisian vibe. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. You're getting the feel for what our daily life is like. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So in Nice, there's this history, and for me, it tied into the history of Monaco.
They lie to
which
you?
There's not that they straight up lie necessarily, but there's a game of deceit involved, and there's an element of like, can you get past? It's very similar to what happens here, but it's like there's a game where they don't take it quite as seriously, but they make you work harder in a different way. And I think it's tied into, I don't know if this is just my own personal observation. I don't know if this is actually, like, there may be an anthropologist out there that disagrees with this assessment, but the history of Monaco, which is in that area, that region has some pride in their history of deception. Because the Principality of Monaco was founded by a guy who pretended to be a monk, and he and his buddies walked up to the city walls, dressed like monks with swords hidden under their cloaks, got in through the door and slaughtered the guys at the gates, and that's how they were able to take over the fortress, and the principality was founded that way. And they still have a statue of this guy dressed as a monk with a sword coming out in front of the palace. So there's this element that, like, there's kind of a pride in being able to outsmart your adversary. So it's not necessarily that they're trying to lie to you.
This is so fucking backwards because, hold on, you're trying to give them your money.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? Like that's the concept of a bank.
Yeah, you would think. But there's an element of like respect that has to be earned. And whether that's like going to the prefecture here, which is the police department where you have to do immigration, and them just making you sweat it out for a while.
Hello, carbonara.
C'est lui?
C'est monsieur.
Oh, trop bien.
Et cannelloni pour monsieur.
C'est moi, merci.
Bonne dégustation.
Merci beaucoup. So I feel like there's this line of like what they're looking for is and I don't know how conscious they are of this. If you talk to French people, they know that this is the case. They know it's how it is. So I think it's just a cultural element, so whether or not they're aware of it. But when they're sitting down there and just deadpan looking at you like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Or you're like, please explain this to me somehow.
Right.
And they're just like, sorry.
Yeah.
No.
And they're just like, no. If you don't know, you don't know. That whole thing, I think, for them is like they're seeing if you're willing to jump over the barriers, which at some point like makes some sense as far as like, do you really want to be here? We're gonna make you prove it. But on the other side, you're right. It is so counterproductive and slows everything down so unnecessarily that it depends on my mood on the day whether or not like I'm like, this is just the way it is, or I'm like, like freaking out because exactly, you're like, just take my money. Even in stores, you walk into a store and you're like, hi, I would like to buy the thing, and they're like, impossible. And you're like, well, whoa, what is your job here, sir or ma'am? Like, I don't understand why I have to work so hard. Like, first of all, I tried to come yesterday, but you weren't open for some reason, even though it's posted that you are open. Today, you were closed for an extra half hour at lunch, so I'm back for the third time, and now you just won't take my money?
That
happens every day.
Insane, dude. It
happens every day.
Insane. And it's crazy because I love this country, and I'm actively promoting France so hard to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm always telling Americans, come visit, come spend time here.
Amazing.
It's amazing. There's a big community of Americans here.
Yeah, huge. There's so many people here.
The architecture is brilliant. The food is brilliant. I love the language. Beautiful women, and I mean, beautiful people in general.
It's true, but well, let's be honest. The women are like a class above.
It's just
the
crazy,
men here. my single female friends do not appreciate how the disparity in dating availability here.
But that being said, it's like this whole bureaucracy issue is such a massive roadblock.
It is.
It really.
You can't come here and expect to have an easy time.
Puts such a bad taste in your
This
mouth.
is why, like, we don't have to go down this road, but this is one of the reasons why I have a lot of friends, among many, and I'm not going to take a side on this debate, but the whole Emily in Paris thing, one of the reasons that there's like this like loathing of it among certain expats is because it makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
It makes it look like everything is easy. You don't even have to speak the language. Like, it's fun, whatever.
And you can be dumb. You can be like a dumb American.
I'm not going to come down on any sides here, but I will say that like the thing is that it's like it undermines just the sheer like emotional stress you have to go through to live here.
Yeah.
The fact that it took you a year to get a bank account.
And for the record, I mean, I'm fluent in French.
Yep.
I have French contacts.
Yep.
Like, I'm not even your typical expat.
Yeah, and they just turned you away everywhere.
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff, like, yeah, there's a reality to it that I think that the danger is, and one of the reasons a conversation like this about what it's really like to be an American in Paris is helpful, because hopefully it's not to discourage anybody from coming, it's just to add a layer of like reality to the top of it, where you say like, look, like, you should come. It's great if you want to be here, but recognize that no matter how badly you want to be here, they're gonna make you work for it. Yeah. And no matter how well you speak French or how whatever, like, you'll get lucky. There are days where they're really nice and they just grease the path for you, but those days exist only to highlight for you how easy it could be.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time, not so much. So, but yeah, then I think you also adjust to the pace of life a little bit, and you're like, all right, well, hey, if I get one thing done today, that's going to be a good day.
I mean, yeah,
And then,
but it's still just so frustrating. I mean, I don't want to just bash French culture here. I just want to.
There's no bashing.
I've done my love story version of this.
Yeah.
And it's true. I love this place.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, it's just like such a battle, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to kind of, let's eat, and then I want to dive into like the psychology of that.
we promise not to talk about any of this while we eat.
Yeah. Now I'm in food coma mode.
Yeah. We should have done it hungry.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Anyways, speaking about Americans in Paris, like, there are a lot of people that really just want to, like, where's the wine, where's the charcuterie, where's the fromage?
Yeah.
I'm good. And for me, it's like, I don't know, I actually, there's so much good food here, so much good Vietnamese food, Italian food everywhere, like, there's a lot of great stuff. I just think it's kind of funny that, like, I'm sure there was somebody that was like, you guys are making a video about being in American Paris and you're sitting at an Italian restaurant.
But that's the point. Like, I actually completely agree with that. I think it's super unfair that New York gets to be this ultra international place, but Paris can't be. Like, Paris has everything.
Yeah.
Paris has every ethnicity.
I've yet to find the pizza of my dreams, but otherwise, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But, you know, like, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, right? Like to me, living here is so different from visiting, obviously.
Yeah, and that's a big
because
part of it.
I feel totally cool with just like this. For me, is Paris.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's get a hot dog.
and there's and part of the what did you say?
I said, let's get a hot dog.
Yeah. part of the DNA of the city, I think, is just like any major city, influenced by the people that come from other places. There are a ton of Italians here. And so to just accept their impact on the city, to me, is normal.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that's another thing that comes with living somewhere instead of just visiting somewhere. You know, when you visit, you're like, I gotta hit it for the things it's famous for.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and living here, I mean, you can do that, but there comes a point, like for me, I went through a long period where I didn't eat almost anything French for a long time because I ate so much of it that I was like, I just want other food, you know? And then you start to discover all these, like, because where I grew up, we didn't have Lebanese food, we didn't have Vietnamese food, we didn't have, like, so many cuisines, Indian food, which is also a struggle to find here, but you start finding I think the longer you live abroad, the more your palate opens up, hopefully. And for me, I've made an effort. Like, there's a lot of food I didn't like that I was like, I'm going to like this.
Yeah.
So not like all at once, but like you start, every chance you get, you sample it, you try it, and you keep coming back. And eventually you learn like, oh, because I started liking this thing over here, now this thing that I thought was disgusting is great. And, you know, and that's a process that you go through over time. So I don't begrudge anybody that wants to eat but it's your life, if you live here, does not look like, it's not a vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not on vacation when you're here. Like, you're working, there are days, and I think that's part of the FOMO of living in a big city too, but if you're not from here and you live here, you're like, well, I got to maximize my time.
Yeah.
And there comes a moment where you're like, no, I literally just need to sit at home and work all day.
I go to the Eiffel Tower maybe once every few months. Like,
right. And most Parisians never see it, you know, except from a distance.
Yeah.
And,
so it's not a thing. I don't see it every day. That's
it's
for sure.
a long ways away from the middle of town.
Yeah,
too,
it's really not in the middle. Especially, you know, I'm much closer to Montmartre.
Yeah.
When you go up to the Sacré-Cœur, you can't even see it, really.
Yeah, you gotta go around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. Healthcare, education,
yeah, for sure.
You know, all these things that we're like, you know, I would say the left is fighting for in the U.S.
Sure.
It's just like established here, you know? But then there's...
Yes and no, but then you have other stuff as far as on the women's lib or like racial justice or whatever, there's a lot of stuff that they're way behind on as well as far as like the public conversation goes. So it's very, I feel like education is a great example. The American system and the French system are like broken in opposite ways, and if they could meet in the middle, they'd have a really good system. Where the American system is broken in the sense...
It would be a really good system for half of each country.
Yeah, exactly. It just meld...
Right?
Which half?
The half... The pieces that would fit together well of each system would really please one half of each of the nations.
Maybe.
Right?
But the thing is that, like, for me, this is me, and this could get me in hot water, but like my experience, because I taught in 2 different French high schools, and then I taught at an engineering school not far from here. And in my experience, the thing was that like they come at the same thing from opposite directions, where in France they tell the students, they tell kids that they're garbage and they need to prove otherwise.
Yeah, that's a super...
And they're always like knocking them down, always, to a point that sometimes I feel like it's abusive, but like...
It is. I went to French high school, yeah.
There you go, yeah. And you have teachers that literally like, they're like, this is what my teacher did to me, so I'm going to do it to you. So the way the grading system works in France is that it's a grade out of 20, but you start at 0 and you have to earn your points.
And you never get 20.
Never.
Like 20 is like
twice in your entire career.
I mean, if you get 19, you're shitting yourself.
Yeah, it's crazy. Know? And then on the other side, the American system starts at 100 and like, oh, we'll give you extra credit to get back up there. Don't worry, we believe in you.
You can get more than 100.
You can get more than 100%. And like, so then it's that thing where with the American system, what we actually hobble our kids the opposite direction, where we tell them you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
And don't give any real practical direction, or like look at the system and go like, well, maybe we're not going to like train you to be manufacturing anymore. Like maybe you should. So they come in from the opposite direction.
University is opposite, because in the U.S. you have to get accepted.
Yeah.
Right?
But once you're in, you're in.
once you're in, and you go all the way through. Whereas in the French system, you can get in, but then you have to. But then they're extremely selective after the first year or
I
whatever.
don't know how that works, but that sounds right.
And it's actually for sure not everybody's making it through.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, we're gonna cull you.
So it's the opposite.
The culling system,
because you're not as much of maybe a client.
So there's like a happy middle ground there where there could be some realism, being like, okay, Timmy, you're not big enough to be a linebacker. However, you are smart enough to be like a chemist. So let's put you into chemistry. You know, like there's a way of approaching it that could be really, really healthy between the two. And so we both have our faults.
I loved the challenge though. I loved. And now we're talking about France more generally because this was high school outside of Paris. But I loved how hard it was. Whereas nothing in my entire time at American high school did I feel was challenging me intellectually, pushing my boundaries. You know, stimulating in that way, and really like training me for life. You know,
I got really lucky because I went to a high school that was really challenging.
And so I guess everything I'm saying is anecdotal. You know?
Well, there are limits to our experience, right? So like everything we're sharing is from our experience, and we cannot speak universally for anything. But I think across the board, like there is a difference there. But it's also a different style. In the French, a lot of it's rote. They're making you memorize endless amounts of things, which is where French students struggle with like their English. They spend all this time memorizing conjugation tables and not actually putting it into a sentence. But on the American side, then we do struggle with. I honestly, actually, even one of the things with the American side is just application. Like, where are you going to use French? You sit in a classroom for 45 minutes. That's it. Like, you're not going to go outside and meet somebody.
It's a joke.
It's just really hard. So like, you don't have the resources available, just human resources. You know? I can see how Paris, there's the Living Museum thing is a real thing, and they're trying to fight that. They're trying to reduce mass tourism. They're trying to
really
greenify the city. They're talking about like not allowing like certain bus companies to resume business or to come into the center of Paris. Like,
that's cool.
They're trying to find ways of making it more sustainable.
I mean, I will say Paris without tourists, holy smokes,
so different.
The whole entire.
So different.
I mean, you know, in many ways it was so difficult throughout 2020, and in other ways it's like I'm so glad I got to have this really rare experience of the city. Because when you remove that, you're like, oh my God, there really is so much awesome shit here.
There's so much to do, and you don't have to push through crowds to get there.
And this is a really cool city where you can do stuff for free. Whereas when I was in New York, I was sweating like all the time. It is so expensive there. You know? Like there's actually a price difference even for food between here and there.
New York,
it's like a third more expensive than here.
Is it really?
It feels like it. It felt like it.
Well, and I think the thing is, like, they do a good job if you're younger too. Like, there's a lot of museums you can get into for free. There's a lot of like discounts for everything. So they try to make it more mobile and that's one of those. That's an interesting difference that I think is changing, but like used to be the case between London and Paris was that London, like the farther you travel on the public transportation, the more expensive it gets, and it's like a form of social control to say like, well, maybe we don't want too many people coming in from too far away, kind of thing. Where here they subsidize how far you have to travel by making like the Navigo. When I first lived here, the Navigo was graded by zone, and you
so the Navigo's like
more the farther you went. The Navigo is the monthly or weekly pass that you pay, and now the monthly pass is the same cost for everybody, no matter how far you're going to go, and they just force you to pay for going out farther than you would otherwise, and that way it makes it more equitable, so people that live farther outside that can't afford to live in the city can come into the city. So there are elements of like the French society that are really, really good for like hitting like equitable points. But you know, it's all of this is a balance. There are things that like are so good in different countries or cultures, and some things that are such a struggle, or that you just do not understand. There's some things that I'm sure are great and fine, I just do not get. You know, like why do we do it this way? This makes no sense. And that's the kind of stuff you just have to learn to accept. Then there are other things that are unjust or that are just not right. In a greater sense on both sides of the Atlantic that I think you have to take. You have to find a way of taking a stand against, or at least opening a conversation, or however you're going to go about it. You can't champion everything, but we're all human.
But but at the end of the day, it's like we complain about a lot of stuff. We have our observations. We have our own perspective, but we are choosing to live here.
You're making a very active choice to live here, and you can't passively live here.
You're not passively living here. Yeah, exactly.
Which is one of those things where people are always like, "Why am I here?" Like it would be so much easier if I just was not here.
That's
You know, that's
so
the
much
big
easier,
thing.
but a lot less. And I hate to sound so cheesy or cliche about this, but it is so much more inspiring to be here.
Yeah.
Like I am more inspired here than in any place in the U.S.
I come alive here in a way that I don't.
New York is pretty cool, but also just moves in a way that I don't love necessarily sometimes.
Yeah.
Like pushing the consumerism, pushing the like speed to a level that's like feels unsustainable. Here you can chill,
You really can.
you know?
Yeah, you really can. I mean, and you still have all the options to have as much FOMO as you want. But
right, and it's thanks to the cultural ways, like the French. You
Things
know,
move
I will
so much more
be
slowly.
alone in a WeWork on a Sunday if I go into work, and I'm trying to do that less and less because I'm observing how the French do it. But they will not go in there, you know.
Yeah.
And it's cool. They have those kind of nice boundaries.
they turn off. It's like work's done.
Yeah.
Time to, and I'm trying to learn that now too. Like it's been a long road to applying, like even having weekends.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start having weekends for the first time in like a decade. But
I have other North American friends that call their weekends vacations, and I'm like, that's not a vacation.
It's not, don't do that.
It's just a weekend.
Don't do that. You got to rest. You got to rest. So there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot. Even like honestly, like one of the things that people, when we're talking about bad experiences and coming to Paris, whether you live here or you're visiting, is like getting yelled at by Parisians for one reason or another. And actually, there's a silver lining to that for me, in that I've learned to stand up for myself in a way that I never did in the States.
What do you
Where
do?
some guy just goes off on you for whatever, if you're on your bike or you're crossing the street or who knows what.
Yeah.
And to just be able to quickly assess, like, was I in the wrong? Like, no.
Yeah.
Screw you. You know, like, no. And the hard thing is that a lot of those guys cannot admit they're wrong, so you got to be careful not to escalate it. But, you know, just being able to stop me, like, what are you talking about? Like, and not take it personally. Because, you know, growing up and for most of my adult life, I would have been like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then it would have, like, ruined my day to some degree. I'd be like, oh, I made somebody angry. Like, you know, why? Like, what did I do? Am I a bad person? And, like, now it's like, no, he's just a dick.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. And then, and you know, even if you were in the wrong, whatever, you can say like, yeah, sorry, whatever, and then just not take the abuse.
Yeah.
But that came at it was a costly thing that I had to go through a number of. I've been pulled off of my bike twice while giving tours.
That's insane.
So
well, but I think a part of it has
both
to be
times in the Louvre, I think actually.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, both times in the Louvre. Yeah.
Okay, the spot where I got robbed.
Yeah,
Cool.
there you go. It happens.
But I think part of it has got to be that like you've come this fucking far.
Yeah.
It's like you're not gonna let some random asshole just scream at you.
Yeah.
You
He's
know?
not ruining my day.
I went to 4 banks and tried to get the Federal Reserve to help me here. I have my bank account now. I'm not gonna let some just random person ruin my day.
You're gonna find your way around all this.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So
it teaches you some perseverance, and that's even now for me. The last time I went into the prefecture, I noted how not stressed out I was, which was the first time I've ever been not stressed. And I even actually forgot. We were standing in line, so it took forever to get in line because they've made it as hard as possible to do the whole thing.
Bad.
It's an insane and super niche thing to complain about.
And super niche
but universal among Americans.
Among Americans,
who live here.
and also incredible to me how bad the website operates.
Well, they intentionally made it that bad. Like, so they're
do they not have servers or what?
So the thing about it is that so I get into the prefecture. It takes, you know, a long time. You're standing in line behind like 70 people in a hallway, like for the one room that they've decided to open up to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And halfway through this line, this lady comes out. She's like, just make sure she's the one that's checking off names. She already checked off my name, but then she was like, make sure you have your passports and your récépissé out. Récépissé is like your temporary visa. And I was like, oh, shit, I forgot both of those. I didn't have it either. I didn't have my passport, and I didn't have my récépissé. And I was like, well, we'll see how this goes. Like, I just had a moment of like, And the girl behind me had forgotten hers, and so she was freaking out. And I was like, hey, like, don't worry about it.
That's the one thing you needed to take with you.
We'll get through it. No, because I had my expired titre séjour and what you really needed was to pay the tax, whatever else.
Okay.
So, anyways, you got it, and I was like, don't worry about it. Like, and I was just like, what's worrying gonna do?
Can't you pay the tax online?
Well, that's the thing. So I had taken it in, I'd already paid it, and then they were like, oh no, you already actually this is expired. Like we've refunded you, but it's cheaper. Like just buy it online, and
which is funny.
Super cool.
Isn't it random how you can do some things just really, really easily online? Like that, the temps fiscal.
Yep.
It takes like 5 minutes.
That one was super easy. They could make everything that easy, but they don't. It's
Why?
a choice. It's a choice. So that's the thing. There are choices that are being made, and so, but all that to say that like after going through, how many times have I been to the prefecture now? Like 7 or 8. I don't know. Like for visa stuff, probably more. Probably like 10. Like I used to get so stressed out, and you just learn through the experience. Like, no, I will sit here, and they will not get rid of me.
Yeah.
And eventually, they will get tired of seeing my face, and then they will give me what I need.
And by the way, there's always a workaround. Like,
Yeah.
If they want to, it's totally possible.
Anything's possible. They just have to want to do it.
Yeah.
And so, so then it was just a different experience for me. Where I was like, it's hopefully the last time I ever have to renew a visa. Because I'll apply for French citizenship next year. But
So you were good. You were in the clear.
I was like, fine, yeah. And then they were like, don't worry about it. Like the guy, when I got up to the window, he was like, passport recipicé, and he's like laughing with the people behind him.
Yeah.
They're having a great time because they reduced their workload so much. They're actually like laughing all the time. It's the happiest, most joyful place I've ever been. And they're just like laughing and like whatever. He's like, okay, takes. And I just like handed him my expired séjour, my expired
You're
residency
silent, right?
permit.
You're just like
here you go. And he's like, takes it, like, just starts writing stuff down. I'm like, are you English? And I was like, in French, like, vous êtes anglais, monsieur? And I was like, you have my nationality in your hands. But I was like, no, American. He's like, American, blah, blah. He's just like really happy. And then just like processed me. He's like, okay, bon. And that was it. Didn't actually ask for what they wanted.
That's awesome, man.
And they just kicked somebody out right before me, though, so I knew it was possible.
No way.
No idea why. The guy just handed him this paper, and they were like, non, c'est plus valable, monsieur. And just pushed it back, and he was like, he's just stuck. Screwed. But the girl that was behind me, same thing. We were both good. And we went in, and then they were really nice. They identified me by my fingerprints instead of...
So you basically Emily in Paris did.
Exactly. It is that easy, it turns out.
Yeah.
I just smiled. I used my charm.
And on that note, so we basically undo everything we've said at the very end.
Just all
so on that note, it's really easy.
It's really easy. Just live here for 9 years, and then eventually,
Do you have any final thoughts that you'd want to share on, I don't know, being an American here, anything we didn't
it's
touch
great.
on?
I would say,
It's such a great experience.
it's amazing. I would say definitely put in the effort to learn French.
If you're considering it, do it.
Because it makes your life so much easier. And if you want a really like core selfish reason to do it, being an American who speaks French well at like any party makes you something different.
Yeah.
You stand out better. So just if you want to date in France,
Yeah. It's like having an extra degree. Like it adds that extra
so
level
cool.
of
It's
class.
like I used to say that it made me feel like the rock star at every party because I would go to these parties and like obviously the bar is really low for Americans. they're just like, oh wow, not only can he tie his shoes but he can speak French. They just start looking at you like, wow, he's back there. And but like we thankfully not all of us are quite. Anyways, that's that thing where then you're like hanging out and they're like, oh wow, and it just generates that much more interest in you. Where there's already interest in Americans, the French generally do love Americans. If you're just a half decent person, you're not being outrageously loud or selfish. I mean, these guys are being nice enough to let us film here, and we are being mildly obnoxious.
Yeah.
But everybody's very welcoming. It's just a matter of taking the time to understand some cultural differences, and if you can put in the extra effort to start learning French, especially if you want to live here long term, you will thank yourself a million times over.
Yeah. If you guys enjoy this conversation, you have to check out Jay's channel. It is entirely on the subject of life in Paris.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about me and my life, and
You
that
and
happens
your
to be
life,
here, yeah.
the processes, your experiences, your vlog, your adventures, and it's not just in Paris. Actually, it takes place in other places.
I've just been stuck in Paris for a really long time.
Yeah. So check it out, and thanks for watching. And it's starting to rain, so I'm going to end it right
Perfect
there.
time to get out of here.